topic here is Al Qaeda members in the United States. And for the most part, we're going to be looking at just a couple of individuals that lived in the United States, were citizens of the United States, or in some cases, even were in the United States military. This is early 1990s before Al Qaeda is officially declared an organization right after the Soviet Afghan War. And we can look at these three operatives right here. It's interesting to point out that these three are playing a role during the Soviet-Afghan War. So if we take a look at the information, here we see getting weapons and transactions, another individual buying weapons. Assam al-Ridi was also a pilot in the United States, and this individual plays a crucial role in getting the famous bin Laden plane that he purchased in the United States, I believe in Arizona. He had also declined a job from bin Laden in the 90s that was going to pay $1,200 that would allow bin Laden to transport material to terrorist cells throughout his terrorist network. So for the most part, we're just looking at individuals that had played a role in the establishment of Al-Qaeda, the shaping of the ideology, especially in the early 90s time period. So looking at this particular slide, we already have that understanding that the Soviet-Afghan War plays a crucial role in establishing Al-Qaeda. And you come to find out that there are other individuals. So here I have an image of Abdullah Azzam, the guy who's leading the fight in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. But you come to find out that Ali Muhammad, who had served in the Egyptian army as well, eventually in the United States Army, he is the individual who is sending training manuals to the Mujahideen fighting in Afghanistan. So this individual is going to play a key role later in using some of his United States Army training to help train terrorist cells in the infancy of Al-Qaeda. Also, at the end of the Soviet-Afghan War, you're going to see the Blind Sheikh, who was apparently jailed in Egypt in the early 80s, as was al-Zawahiri. Both of these individuals were arrested, as were other Islamists, for their views against the Egyptian government trying to establish a caliphate. So you could probably locate footage, as there is video footage of these individuals in an Egyptian jail cell. The Al Farouk Mosque in the United States, in New York City, is playing a key role in helping to get people who want to follow the Azzam call to go to Afghanistan to fight. Let's just say you're in the United States and you want to go help Abdullah Azzam. You listen to his words and his piece in defense of Muslim lands. The Al Farouk Mosque was a place where you could go in the United States and pretty much sign up to eventually find yourself fighting with Abdullah Azzam and the Mujahideen. And again, this is also after the Soviet-Afghan War. And so the Blind Sheikh plays a key role in the 90s, as does Ali Muhammad. As these individuals at the end of the 90s, end of the 80s, we should also remember that Abdullah Azzam is going to be assassinated. Who is possibly responsible is probably al-Zawahiri, or somehow al-Zawahiri is responsible, or knows at least who is responsible. And that really is a result of the 1989, the end of the Soviet-Afghan War. Abdullah Azzam, in his defense of Muslim lands, everything that he was arguing, and just to recap, he argued that if you were a Muslim, you had an obligation to go to Afghanistan to help defend your Muslim brothers and sisters against the Soviet Union. His ideas were only supposed to be applicable in Afghanistan. The problem is al-Zawahiri wants to take that same concept and he wants to apply it on a global scale and argue that his organization has an obligation to defend Muslims globally. This is definitely what Azzam was not trying to accomplish. He viewed this more as an issue that was applicable only in Afghanistan. So if you had traveled, let's just say you were in the United States, you went to the Al Farouk Mosque, you signed up, you found yourself here. In 1989, what would you do? Azzam would probably say, well, you're going to go back to where you're from. The problem is there's been people from Iraq, people from Yemen, people from Egypt, people from all over that followed Azam traveled to Afghanistan to help fight. And in some cases, the governments the countries they left their governments don't want them to return. So at the end, what's going to happen is early 90s, you're going to wind up with all of these soldiers who are in Afghanistan and really have no place to go. Are they going to follow Azam? Are they going to follow al-Zawahiri? Or are they going to follow bin Laden, who at this point is viewed more as a individual with money, with limited military experience in the Soviet-Afghan War? So Zahawi seems to really be the guy that has the respect of the Mujahideen in comparison to Osama bin Laden. And bin Laden's prestige would eventually become, to outshine al-Zawahiri, but that would show up later. Again, we're looking at the early 90s, late 80s. Anyway, so what we know is that there's a rift within the Mujahideen. They're about to split. Are we going to follow Azam or are we going to follow al-Zawahiri? And remember, al-Zawahiri is trying to apply Azam's ideas on a global scale, whereas Azam is looking specifically at the Muslims in Afghanistan. Either way, it doesn't matter. Azam, as we know, is going to be killed, and that is going to create a power vacuum within the Mujahideen. And who's going to fill that leadership void? It's probably going to be these two, al-Zawahiri as well as Osama bin Laden. And that's precisely what is going to end up happening. That bin Laden and al-Zawahiri are going to argue, that we have a new enemy. We're going to keep fighting our enemy. I have the money. I have the soldiers. Keep following us. And eventually, Azam's organization, MAK, would evolve to Al-Qaeda, the new organization that is going to take the same ideas but apply them on a global scale. The problem is they have to convince all of those mujahideen that had traveled to Afghanistan to participate in the jihad against the Soviet Union. From the views of these individuals, they're probably thinking, well, we just want to go back home. Like, we're done. We did our religious part. It's over. But they're under pressure from these two individuals who are trying to convince them to stay and fight. So I just put here, well, we have no enemy. The Soviets have left. We're victorious. And, our religion prevents us from fighting. Like, who are we going to fight? Life is sacred according to the Quran. So how are we going to go about fighting an enemy? We can't go on an attack because we're not under attack. It's conditional. And it would be bin Laden and al-Zawahiri as well as the original members of Al-Qaeda that would argue that, no, we are still under attack. And that attack is coming from the West, especially after the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein's Iraq. So again, the title for this was Members in the United States. And I can't help but go back to the Soviet-Afghan War, the purchase of bin Laden's planes, these individuals playing a key role in getting resources to Afghanistan, the Al-Farouk mosques providing recruits, this individual providing military training. And you start to see a lot of connections between the Soviet-Afghan War, the end of the Soviet-Afghan War, and the early 90s involvement of U.S. citizens and people in the United States that are eventually working to establish this new organization called Al-Qaeda.